Planning Commission meeting to order. We'll start off with a roll call. Commissioner Rickard.
Here.
Commissioner Beasy.
Here.
Commissioner Balator.
Here.
Commissioner Wu.
Here.
Chairman Hinckley's here. We have a quorum. We'll start our first order of business will be the approval of the meeting agenda. Entertain a motion.
I entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
I have a question. Are we going to, during staff comments or something, discuss the park plan and what happens next?
We can't do that.
Okay, and I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. First up is, we have two sets of minutes to approve. So the first ones that we're going to look at are from our January 25th, 2023 meeting. I looked them over. I didn't see anything that stood out.
One thing that I noted is that it set next meeting from February 22nd to February 15th, and that never happened.
Right.
So
So,
the meeting was canceled.
yes, does that need to be noted in here?
I don't think so.
This records what happened in that meeting, and what happened in that meeting was we said.
We did change it, yeah.
To be,
Okay,
so what happens after that is not part of this.
okay, all right, I didn't know that, okay.
Anybody else have any comment? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Okay, I move that we approve the January 25th minutes as is.
Do I have a second?
That.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we will now look at the minutes for the special meeting we had last week on Tuesday, March 21st. I looked them over. I didn't see anything that was out of order on.
I found one thing.
Okay?
On number 5, under reports, the Planning Commission,
Yeah.
second line, it says complete update of city's building permit, like there was more than one city rather than like it belongs to the city. So it should be Y apostrophe S.
I did that incorrect, thank you.
And then
So what would the correction on that be? Just add.
an apostrophe.
Okay.
I think it's Y apostrophe S,
Right.
but I wouldn't swear to it. Then I kind of wondered, that last line says, we need the council to consider plans for the next year and next 5 years on what they want to see. I think it's more what they wanted the Planning Commission to work on, to just be a little more clear rather than.
Okay, I believe I asked the question of the council, what would they like us to see in the next year and the next 5 years?
But see in relation to the Planning Commission.
Right.
Right.
What would they like us to work on? Right, exactly, is what the intention of that question was.
Yeah. Oh, and then one more.
Okay,
Under Millwood Historic Preservation Commission, fourth line from the bottom, showed Bobby video. That's actually IE, not Y.
Bobby is B-O-B-B-I-E. I
Hey.
have Aunt Bobby, and she spells it B-O-B-B-E-E.
Yeah,
So I've
I've seen that.
always-
And I've seen
doing
it
it.
just I,
Yeah.
but Y is usually a guy. And I wouldn't have said anything except we had the others anyway.
I would appreciate that. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve with those edits.
I so moved.
What's that second? Anybody?
Second.
Oh, perfect. Don't we have a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So that brings us to number 5, action items. A discussion on zoning code amendments. And I'm thinking that you're going to lead this one.
I am, yes. This is probably going to be a fairly short meeting this evening. I just have a couple
Okay.
of things. So, as you know, I think, with Paul's leaving, we have kind of restructured the Public Works Department. So just as an FYI to you all, I will be coming forward sometime, hopefully in the next 2 months. There's a couple of references in the zoning code to the public works. Listen, throughout the whole code, the whole city code, it's referred to as many things. Public Works Director, Public Works Supervisor, Superintendent. So Kyle and Matt splitting that job are now going to have 2 new titles, and so we'll just have to go back through our code and update those to, I think it's Facilities Supervisor and Utilities Supervisor. So I'll be coming forward with that. But the one that I wanted to talk to you about is, I know we talked about this at length when we did the permitted use matrix, and I don't recall us striking it from the matrix, but I had a call recently. Actually, someone applied for a business license, and it looked like they were going to have a contractor's yard in the C2. And we don't have contractor's yard as a line item in the permitted uses matrix. And so I'm here asking you tonight, specifically you, do you remember us striking that? It seems to me like it's a common enough occurrence that it should be in there.
There were a number of things that we said if it's not on the list, it's not permitted unless it fits into something that
Sure.
is on the list.
I guess what I'm saying is I feel like it needs to be a line item.
Sure.
And I think, it's probably pretty clear where they would be acceptable to locate. But with your approval that you agree that it should be a line item, then I would like to bring that back to you as well as a code amendment, adding that to the permitted use matrix, and then we can have the discussion as a group of where to allow it and get that updated, because that is one that we get fairly frequently. And I tried to, short of going back and listening to all those meetings, I tried to think of a reason why we wouldn't have included it, and I just can't imagine why we didn't, so.
What would constitute a contractor's yard? Just a few trucks parked there, or are we, maybe we need to
No.
define it if we're going to add it?
And that can be part of the discussion too. In my mind, I think that is a good point. In my mind, a contractor's yard would be more like the storage of materials and stuff.
Okay.
If you have a business office and you park a truck or two there that's got your logo on it, that's not really a contractor's yard. But if you're stacking building materials and that sort of thing outside, then that's something that we hear about enough that I think it needs to be in the table. So if you're fine with that, then I will work that up and bring that back to you and start that through the process.
Good idea.
Okay. That's all I have on that one.
Okay. Next up is our 2023 work plan.
That description might be a little bit misleading because you all were at the special meeting where Mike did request the city council to direct us on where we're headed. So what I really wanted to talk about more, maybe work plan isn't the right word, is a little bit of a tricky area, which is the farmer's market. I really like the Planning Commission and the farmer's market. I think there's a whole host of reasons why it's really good for us to be there. But we have to be really careful about how we conduct those meetings. And one of the things that our legal counsel has advised is that we really need, it can't just be a stop by and say hi. There has to be some sort of directed subject matter that we are focused on. So last year it was the park plan, obviously. So I wanted to talk with you, knowing that we did, make the overture to city council and ask them for direction, but if you had any ideas on things that might be appropriate, and then also to share with you the one idea that I had, which is, as I think most of you know, we have a land use action going on the east side of Millwood that's quite controversial. And there's just really a lot, not speaking to that project in particular, but in talking to the folks who live over there and are concerned, there's just a general sort of lack of understanding about zoning and how zoning works and how zoning can affect your neighborhood. And so I was contemplating the idea of maybe focusing our booths around that. What is zoning? Why is it important that you know what your property is zoned and what is allowed there? And maybe we could try and get some, try and help clarify things for people so they have a better understanding, even of just how to go about finding out what's allowed in their neighborhood. Because, it's a shock to many people when they find out some of the things that can happen in a residential neighborhood. So that was an idea that I had. I don't know if you guys have any other ideas or things that you are interested in. I know that we have talked about potentially going back and looking at the signage regulations. That might be something with our social media pages that I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with. We might be able to advertise that a little bit better and hopefully get some business owners to come and talk to us about what they like or don't like about our sign regulations. That might be one we could do. I've had a council member approach me about the C2 zone and going back and looking at that and seeing if there's anything that we want to change or can do there. So I don't know. I'm interested to hear if you all have anything or what you think of those ideas.
I think the zoning is really a good idea. I mean, I bet a lot of people don't have a clue what all the different zones are and where they are. So maybe we could start with a map that shows all the different zones and where they are, and then people could look and see where they're living as a start. But it is kind of a complicated, trying to explain some of that to some people that would stop by the booth, I think would be a little tough, but not necessarily impossible. But that might be a good start.
I was thinking that, so the map, that I also had that, but we could do poster boards of the permitted use matrix, and then people could look and see. And even if, maybe we do some posters of our webpage showing people how to get to that sort of information on their own. That was an idea that I had. We also have a television screen that we could potentially have our website up and be able to show people. If all we accomplished through it was just helping people to be more comfortable finding the information and really just maybe spurring some interest to find out what is allowed in your neighborhood,
What about passing out the little QR codes with people, then they can scan it and it takes you right to your website?
Yeah, we could do that.
That'd be
That's a
cool.
good idea.
'Cause
Yeah,
when
we
you
could
just
do
type
that.
in City of Millwood, sometimes it's hard to pull it up.
Okay.
So
I think there's an old website of Tom's
There
floating
is.
around out there. Yeah, and so I get people who call and are angry about our website that doesn't have any information on it, and
redirect.
yeah. So, yeah, a QR code, I might,
Let's hope it's just on the little business cards.
Yeah.
Super easy. Or a flyer.
yeah, that's a
Whatever.
good idea.
You could have one go right to the municipal code.
Mm-hmm.
You could have multiple
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
Right to the
yeah.
website, to the code.
To the,
whatever other
comprehensive
sections
plan.
you might want to
Okay.
share. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. On the signs, I don't think it'd be terribly productive to try to make a big deal about the businesses again. They generally, if they've been there a while, they already have their sign. Otherwise, they tend not to be interested till we get a new one that wants a sign. But there was some just cleanup stuff we needed to do. Things like Bottles has these cool signs in the window, the beer signs. Those are not legal under our code. And there's several other businesses that have lighted signs in windows, and sometimes they're totally appropriate, but we've outlawed them.
Okay.
So there's just, and then the other one is I'm concerned about the number of lumens in a sign. I've seen some on Trent that just like blind you when you're driving by. And there's no need for that in C2 especially, but I'd say in Millwood in general, if nobody has a super bright one, you don't get into that war of brighter to be seen. Everybody can be seen
Right.
if everybody's lower. So I think we should put some limits on number of lumens too. So just some cleanup stuff.
Yeah, I agree with Bobby, that's on the signs, that's already what's required, because we beat that up pretty hard.
Mhm.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other ideas?
Could think of some for next meeting.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and start planning for the June farmer's market to be a zoning information. And if what we end up with is 3 different farmer's markets, all with zoning, that's fine too. I mean, that's what we did with the park plan, and we can sort of workshop some different ideas or different activities. I think I've told you this before, but at Millwood Days, I was shocked by the popularity of just a map of the city with a sign that says, "Where do you live?" and let people put like a thumbtack. And you can't believe how excited people are to find their parcel and put their little pin in it. So if we end up doing just general zoning information throughout the whole summer, I think that's fine too. Okay?
And who knows, the first market might generate some.
Ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interest and other things that might come up. Yeah.
Because I'm sure they're still gonna get questions about the park.
Right.
And I'm sure we're gonna field a lot of questions about parkland.
So and I will,
Project you mentioned earlier.
right. I will follow up with the city council as well at their April meeting on Mike's request and see if I can get some direction from them, because we really are kind of wide open at this point. We've done all the heavy stuff. Now it should just be easy living. So, all right.
Anything else? Nope. Perfect. Okay, that brings us to item number 6, public comment. I do see we have a visitor in the crowd. Sir, are you here to address the planning commission? Are you here to
I
address
am
the
the crowd.
It's a crowd of one.
Yeah, I do have something to say, just a couple of quick
Okay,
suggestions.
so I have to stop you right there, just a moment.
Can you turn the microphone on? There's just a little switch on the side there.
I'm not tech savvy.
Okay,
Okay, there you
okay, and so.
Now I know where the button is.
Sir, just one moment.
Yep.
So, first of all, we need you to introduce yourself with your address, and then do we need to read the public comment?
go. No, I don't think so.
Okay, so if you would introduce yourself and your address.
My name is Winston Wiggins. I live at 9925 East Dalton,
Okay.
right over here, not far from the mill. And I'll be brief. But I got a couple of comments, I guess, and I'm going to tag on to what Christina was talking about, which is potential code changes. And it sounded like mainly cleanup that you guys were talking about tonight. She did mention the controversial project on the east side. I would say that she underemphasized the word controversial, and you probably know that. My hope, and I'm not here to debate that or appeal that tonight, my hope is that it will be denied, because having been through the application, it appears to me it's totally inconsistent with the code on a variety of points. If that happens, which I hope it does, then I think the council, the planning commission, I don't know the hierarchy of how things work. I hope that the city would change the code to eliminate any reference to manufactured home parks, except for a statement that manufactured home parks are not allowed within the city limits of Millwood, Washington. I don't know the genesis of that zoning change over there, or I'm not even sure it's a zoning change, because it's still the same zone, and which makes the idea of people looking to see what zone they're in and what's allowed, because this is a separate thing that's very restrictively defined in I don't know what, a 2-block area. That's the only place in the city where they're allowed. I don't know the genesis of that, and I'm not making accusations, but it's got all the hallmarks of a spot zoning situation. And I think that's inappropriate. I'll make one other comment. I think one of the problems that the city has is a lack of communication. Now, I'm not criticizing Christina. I'm not criticizing anybody here. But you guys are abiding by the code, Washington law, whatever applies. I understand that. But this is a small community. And to be honest with you, based on my sort of informal survey of my neighbors and friends, nobody reads the spokesman review. And least of all, the legal notices. I think that there's no reason why the notification could not be expanded, lengthened, and still do the formal stuff that's required by law, but also have a more informal communication. Now, the website is fine. I've complimented Christina on the way the website has gone up. But, every month we get a water bill, and some months there's a little sheet in there which has good information, leaf pickup, have your water system checked, all these good things. There's no reason that almost like a news release type item couldn't be in there that says, oh, these are code changes in the city that may impact you. Now, I realize that's going over and above. I have dealt in my career before I retired with hundreds, literally hundreds, of public notification situations. And we had a law. This was in Idaho. We had laws that said it has to be advertised such and such, ABC, so long. I routinely advertised well beyond the boundaries. It cost me some money. It cost my agency some money. But it helped. And it made the people, it gave them a feeling that they were important. And right now with this narrow, albeit legal, notification process, when something pops up that people were unaware of, it leaves the impression, I'm not saying it's the right impression, but it leaves the impression that something sort of in the shadows happened. And I don't think that's very smart. I think it would be a minimal impact on the city, and it would be something that would be easily done, and it would open up lines of communication so people didn't have that feeling. So at any rate, those are my comments. Thank you very much. Enjoy a short meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming forward. I want to just maybe mention a few things based on what he said. I don't disagree with what he said about maybe a little more informal, but I just want to point out, sir, that we've had several issues like this come before us in the past, and however the public has been notified, we've had packed houses over certain issues. So the word does get out. We've had overflowing crowds come to planning commission meetings before over controversial projects. So, but I appreciate you coming forward.
And if I might just add, you're going to get it on controversial projects. But what makes a lot of projects controversial is the fact that people don't understand what's going on until the last minute. And that's what I'm talking about, trying to overcome. That's all I'm suggesting.
Thank you. I recognize Commissioner Beasley.
On the zoning and the allowing of manufactured homes, way back when we redid our codes, Washington State passed their, what it's called, their Land Use Act. The planner at the time, the way she read the state law was that we were required to have manufactured homes. And other planners have had the same impression. So the reason that that was allowed where it was allowed was because they looked at it and they came to the conclusion, rightly or wrongly, that that was the least bad place to put it if the state was going to require us to allow it. And so, I mean, it's been there forever. Nobody has changed it in recent memory to make it happen. It's,
So I'll just tagging on to that. One of the big misconceptions that has come out of this process, and I've talked with Winston about it, is that so when you go into the code and you read a section of code, at the bottom you will see a reference to an ordinance with the date. And so that's usually the simplest way to see when that specific regulation came to be. So last year, when we overhauled the entire code, all of those references switched to last year. So what has happened in this case is that folks have gone in and they've seen that date change, and even though this group did not touch those regulations, we kept those, it still appears as if we did. And it's been very difficult to convince folks that we didn't just last year decide to allow manufactured home parks. In trying to understand it, because the questions I'm getting and the questions the city council are getting are, why did you do this? How could you think this was appropriate? So I decided I went into the old code, found the reference, went back and tried to find it, and I found meeting minutes from 2015, and the language that Mr. Richardson had in there was very brief, but it said that the manufactured home regulations were updated for compliance with state regulations.
right.
So that's as much as I'm really able to derive from our documents, but that is a confusion for folks when they look at the code and see that date reference that it was just last year.
Well, it was in place well before I was on the planning commission.
I think the
And
state,
I have documents at home that would show that,
I think the state does have regulations, and I think, I don't want to speculate too much, and I think it's inappropriate for us to talk very much more about this matter. But what I think / hope is that possibly following this project, someone from the community will apply for a code amendment. And then that could spur us to researching and having our legal counsel research, what are we required to have?
Yes.
But, you know, I really thought that would happen after the manufactured home, or not the manufactured home, but the retirement community went in. And it never came to fruition. So we'll see what happens. But I think you're right. That is what I found, is that there was some state law. And as I continue to talk to people, I continue to try and reiterate that that's a longstanding regulation that we've had in there, so.
And to the other point, I have long been an advocate for tell as many people as you can, as many different ways as you can. You know, make sure you fulfill the legal requirements, but let's go beyond.
And I will say this about that. I'm not opposed to extending our noticing. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. However, I will also say this. No amount of noticing, and I would say this right to you, Winston, no amount of noticing will ever be enough. Because regardless of how far, with the possible exception of noticing every single dwelling in Millwood every time there's a land use action anywhere, there will always be someone who's just outside of it and who's mad that they didn't get noticed. I had a real unpleasant phone call with a gentleman about a 2-lot short plat over on Buckeye and Sargent. I think you probably all know what I'm talking about. It was a house on the corner, and they divided off and put one more house in there. And I noticed the adjacent property owners as the code dictates, and this gentleman was 1 or 2 houses outside of that, and he was irate. And so he said, you need to provide more notice further out. And I said, okay, how far out? How far out is enough for a 2-lot short plat? Is it 100 feet? Is it 6 blocks? And he wouldn't answer me, but except to say,
Who's he?
a citizen, except to say that what I had done was inadequate. And the other thing that I tried to emphasize to him is that I don't have any latitude, because if I decide that the manufactured home park deserves more noticing, and I notice a 400-foot radius instead of just the adjacent property owners, but then on the 2-lot short plat, I don't, then we start getting into this legal issue of, why are you doing more for one than another? So I've said this to Winston, I've said it to the other folks. It does not make anyone happy. It doesn't, assuage their anger. I can only do what the code tells me to do, and I can't do any more, and I can't do any less. So if we want to, don't look at me like that. If we want to change the code to have a wider noticing requirement, we can do that. But as a staff person, I don't have the latitude to decide to further notice this action, but stick to the code for this one. So, that may be something that I bring up to the city council either at their next meeting or following the issuing of this decision, and how that process works out. After they hear from the public, maybe they will feel like that it is appropriate to extend, because right now it says adjacent property owners. So I send just to the ones, including across the street and diagonal, any property that's touching the subject property. I don't have any latitude to make decisions on the fly for that, but it doesn't affect me one way or the other, no matter how we notify it.
And do you post said property?
No, we don't post the property, we post our notice boards. So that's what our code calls for, is the newspaper and the notice boards. I can do the website.
Yes.
And then like today, on the manufactured home park and another project over at North 40, we do post the site for a SEPA determination. So those signs went up today. I'm not crazy about how we do that either. So I'm thinking about talking with Kyle about how we post those notices, and if the city council decides that I should post notices of application as other jurisdictions do on the site, then I'm happy to do that too. It really is no skin off my back, but I just have to have it in the code.
Yeah, I think we used to post on site, because there used to be signs all over in the spring.
Yeah.
And the website would be nice. If you, without any trouble, can post on the website, let's start doing that, even if it's something tiny,
Okay.
just.
I'm not going to make any promises there, but I will endeavor to do that
Okay.
better, yes.
And I was referring to the SEPA signs.
Yes,
So
the
that-
SEPAs are posted on site.
How does our zone compare to City of Spokane Valley? You're familiar with that, so.
The noticing requirements?
Yes.
So there's a number of differences, maybe not a number, there's a few. So in Spokane Valley, their code very clearly, it has just in table format, I love my tables. It says the different kinds of land action, and then it has one of 2 different noticings. So a short plat, which would be the division of land for 9 or fewer lots, that gets noticed just to adjacent properties, just like we do here. If it's 9 or more lots, then it gets a 400-foot radius. So now here's the difference in Spokane Valley. In Millwood, I do all of that. So I measure out I would measure out 400 feet, figure out who was in it, make the mailing list, that whole thing. Spokane Valley puts the onus of that on the applicant. So the applicant goes to a title company. The title company creates the circle of 400 feet, makes the list, and then the applicant brings in envelopes that have postage and an address on them already to every one of those folks. And then at Spokane Valley, we stuffed them and we stamped them with our return address, but we didn't pay the postage on the notices. Here at Millwood, we don't have any of that. So I have to come up with the mailing list, we pay the postage, I have to stuff them, we have to address them. So, and I was shocked by that when I came to Millwood, because when you think about adjacent properties, which for most lots would probably be 6, that's not a huge, although postage does jump, it seems, every couple of weeks now. But when you're talking about a 400-foot radius, that can really add up in cost as far as staff time. So there's a lot of differences. So I don't know. I would imagine that if the city council wanted to go that way, they would ask me, as I always do, to research what our neighbors do and how they do it, and then bring that to you guys to discuss it and come up with what you think is reasonable. But yeah, those are the differences. Spokane Valley has 2 different things like comprehensive plan amendments. Those are 400-foot radius, so you get a larger swath of folks who are notified. But in the end, really, again, I can't emphasize enough, there will never be enough noticing. And the guy who's 405 feet out of the radius is going to be mad. And that is where you have to sort of rely on your neighbors who did get the notice, which I think is what happened in your area, was once the neighbors who did get the notice got it, then they started reaching out to their other neighbors. So definitely don't have any problem entertaining a change to that if the council wants to. But I can't just make those decisions on my own.
Well, I think we just came up with our first action item for our 2023 work plan. I like what the city of Spokane Valley does.
Yeah,
And I
It's
can,
on the property development
yeah.
right.
and the cost on it.
But how often do we have, you said that was with 9 or more?
Right, so in Millwood, you know,
Which we don't have that much open land to have 9 or more.
we don't for short plat, no, we wouldn't be having big subdivisions. Although I will say this, and I think I said this to Winston, and I've said it to other folks who have come in about this particular project. Land use trends are not for small homes on huge lots. That isn't what nationally is really trending. That is what the east side of Millwood values, the large lots. And so I have repeatedly through this process said to anyone who would listen to me, this will continue to happen as small homes on large lots change hands over time. I don't think the market for people wanting that little house on the big lot that they have to take care of is where society is headed. So if we don't like what it says over there, we need to go about applying to get it changed. My fear would be, or maybe not fear, but I would anticipate that if we don't, we could end up with some subdivisions where a developer comes in and buys up a couple lots, takes down the old houses, and then does come in for some sort of subdivision. So no, right now we don't have a lot of land for subdivisions, but zone changes, comprehensive plan amendments, those all could do a wider noticing radius to get more people aware of what's going on. I do not put a land action like this in our newsletter, but yearly, and I know you all know this because you get the newsletter, I put in there, it's time for comp plan amendments, and then when we get them, I say, here's what we got, and zoning code amendments, and I don't get any play on that. I put it in there every year. I never get calls. I never get questions. So I wouldn't normally put something that was a permitted use, as this is, in the newsletter. And I don't know I don't know about doing that. But I do advertise for comp plan amendments and zoning code amendments, and I don't, sitting here, it doesn't, Winston's the first visitor we've had in, I don't know how many months. It's nice to have someone in the audience. Yeah, I don't think we'll get subdivisions, but I agree that I don't think it's gonna hurt anyone to expand our noticing requirements. So at the April 11th meeting of the council, I will bring this up to them and see if this is something they'd like us to start working on.
Well, we're gonna roll right into your staff report.
Any question? No, I'm kidding. No, I really don't have any staff report to speak of tonight because you were at the special meeting. I want to thank you all for attending. I got a lot of really positive comments from both the city council and some folks in the audience who just felt like that was a very useful and beneficial exercise to have everyone together and to have every board kind of talk about what they've been doing, what they're working on. And so I hope that we'll do that maybe once a year going forward. So you are completely up to date on what's going on in the city. I am going on vacation starting tomorrow. I will be back on April 10th. The only item of note that any of you, I think, might hear about while I'm gone is that I have completed my staff report and decision on the manufactured home park. However, it is going through a legal review at this point. And so that has, because I'm leaving, delayed the issuing of that decision. So I have, and you may, Winston, want to spread the word as well in the neighborhood. I told a number of people that I would be issuing the decision this week, and now it will be further out, probably towards the middle of April. I'll have comments back when I get back from vacation. So if you hear anything, that is why. The staff report is going through a legal review of it right now. Other than that, I can't think of anything else unless you have any questions. Oh, the park plan. You want to talk about the park plan?
She said that was gonna be in commissioner comments.
No, I thought staff, I asked if she was going to discuss it during staff comments.
So, I recognize.
Either way.
Commissioner Beasley.
So what's next?
So what's next, since the council got their full official presentation of what we'd come up with, then the next step will be for me to go to council with it again and say, you saw it, you heard the presentation, comments, changes, see what they say. And then have them remand it back to you for a public hearing.
Okay, a couple of comments on it. Getting everybody together. I was reminded that the park plan involves trees that are part of the Tree and Beautification Board's purview. So perhaps they should specifically be asked for comments on that portion of it and be brought into it. And then the other thing is, before we get a board or something to present it, I'd like to have the kids let's play on the railroad tracks part taken off and just have the map of the new plans. But we don't need to have, the other was very tentative anyway, and it really, we worry about city liability with the merry-go-round, and everybody talks about it with the wading pool. I think setting up something where you make kids comfortable with playing, literally in that case, on railroad tracks with the signs there, I would think would be a real liability issue. And certainly not something we want to get mixed in with the overall plan. I mean, it's so detailed.
So you're talking about the signage for,
The splash pad,
Well,
the splash area.
yeah, part of the,
okay,
also, I remember we discussed that we got about as many people saying that they wanted either natural habitat or the Spokane Indians or various things like that. So we did some talking, I know, about having something naturally oriented with like the river going through the playground or having native, we kind of have native plants on the trail that we could put signs on those as part of the plaque. And we spent some time discussing that, and I didn't see that come through.
Yes, because I don't think that were to that, I think you're getting a little more detailed than where we're at right now. I am a little confused on the railroad thing because I thought so I just told him that was one of the themes that we had talked about going with. My understanding from our discussion was railroad and or river. And so that was why he provided that, just as an example to show how a theme can be executed that way. So I suppose maybe I need to discuss that with the council and see if that's what they want to do, if they feel strongly about a theme. When we start getting into more of the actual construction plans, then I think that's where we start working with a landscape architect on things that you're discussing. And I think those are all very good ideas. I'll be honest, I hadn't given the tree board any consideration, probably largely because the plan does show so many more trees in the park than what's there now. But I think that's a valid comment. So I will circle back with Daniel Hecox, who is now the staff liaison to the tree board, and discuss with him what, if any, involvement and at what level they would like to be involved, or if it's just enough for them to see that we're providing so many new trees and then just being sure to choose the trees off of their list of recommended trees. I think it was mentioned at council, I did budget for a grant writer. And that's really the big thing that, aside from any examples of play equipment or that sort of thing, we need to get someone writing those grants to try and find us some funds. Because much like the Argonne project, if we don't have funds, we don't have a project. So the mayor has asked me to coordinate or try and get the consultant Ken to work with me on, obviously it's not all going to happen at one time. So prioritizing, how to get everything done and moved. There'll be a period of time, of course, where the tennis courts go away and we have to move the playground over so that we can put the courts. So we're going to have to work on some staging plans. But I will talk to the city council about the idea of a theme and if they feel strongly about that one way or another. Those were just, those examples were just meant to show how you could execute a theme, not necessarily that would be how we did it.
Yeah, I think my point is we are not really to the level of that detail yet. And sometimes you get something down there as just, oh, well, this is one possibility. Sometimes it ends up baked into a plan without anybody actually deciding. So let's just present the stuff that we're presenting. This is where the courts are going to go. We're going to have pickleball and we're going to have tennis. And this is, where the playground will be, and then the new restroom, and the things that we're more at now. And
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
worry about.
Sure.
Any other questions for Christina? based on your staff report, it sounds like that you are not going to replace Paul, you're dividing his duties up.
Yes.
Okay.
So Paul was the Public Works Director. We now no longer have a Public Works Director. We have a Facilities Supervisor and a Utilities Supervisor. Matt Erdahl, who's been with the city since 1999, will be in charge of water and sewer. And Kyle Shiwi will be taking over roads, constructions, parks, public spaces, and buildings.
So which is which? Which is utilities and which is facilities?
Kyle is facilities. Matt, or the beard, if you need direction on who's who. Matt is utilities. Yes, Matt has the beard.
And facilities is roads?
Facilities, yeah, roads, construction, right-of-way stuff, the trail, the park, our buildings, yeah.
So then is the plan to hire subordinates for?
We already have subordinates. Daniel Hecox will be working with Kyle on the facilities side. And then late last year, we hired someone anticipating Paul's retirement. His name is Bryce Nowak, and he will be working with Matt on utilities. And then as per usual, we will be hiring a temporary park attendant for the summer.
And then question number 2 I have, and I'm sorry I'm remiss, but I've not been formally introduced to our new minute taker.
Yeah, none of us have.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Could we be formally?
I forgot, we didn't have a meeting last month, sorry. So you'll remember the verbal abuse I heaped on Lisa the last time we were all together. This is Denise. Denise is our new administrative assistant upstairs. And so she will be the one who will be at our meetings. She'll be getting your packets out to you. I haven't driven her off yet. She's been here since the 1st of February, so that's promising anyway. So yes, Denise, Planning Commission. Planning Commission, Denise.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. That brings us to commissioner comments. Commissioner Rickard?
Could you go over, I got kind of foggy there for a minute. Could you go over the areas of responsibility for that position being divided up again?
Sure. So Matt is going to be our utilities supervisor. So he will be in charge of the water system and the sewer system. Kyle will be facilities, which is roads and construction, parks and open spaces, and any city-owned buildings or properties.
Can I ask a quick question about Kyle's?
When it's your turn.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do that all the time.
Anything else, Commissioner Rickard? Commissioner Beasley?
Good.
Commissioner Molitor?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to compliment you on the presentation that you made last week at the meeting. I thought it was extremely well done, explaining all the projects that we'd completed and how, yes, and I'm sure that somebody else had a lot to do with that. So good job, Christina. Nice presentation. My question was, as I tried to jump in there, Kyle, as far as roads and construction, sounds like Matt in utilities has been with us a long time and has a good background. What background does Kyle have in roads, construction, and his areas of responsibility?
Well, so yes, Matt has been with the city for a long time. He actually did recently, in order to take this position, pass his water operator 2, I believe, test. So, so that's Matt. Kyle has been with the city since 2014, working in the Public Works Department. So he has 9 years under Paul's direction. But prior to that, Kyle was a heavy equipment operator doing road construction and that sort of thing. So that's his background. And he's always the one when we have something where we're running a machine that that Kyle's doing it. And Kyle will work closely with our engineers at Welch Comer. I think there's a huge learning curve. I think he can do the boots on the ground work, but the networking and the paperwork and all of that's going to be new for him. So that's one of the benefits of having Lisa down there to assist them. They, as they really learn the ropes. You just cannot overstate Paul's institutional knowledge. And he said on one of his last days, you tell me an address and I'll tell you where their sewer line is. He just knows, and so it's hard to replace something like that. I told him, I said, I don't ever do this, but I know, like for March Madness, I've seen those things where you pick a square. I don't know how it works, but I said, we should do something like that on how many times your phone's going to ring in the first week and the first month. So he told me tonight he's leaving on vacation tomorrow, so he's getting out of Dodge. But thank you to those of you who came to his party last week. He was very touched by that and very moved by the turnout. So I think he said to me, I'll be in when you and I get back from vacation to find out about Mexico. So I think he's still going to be coming in quite a bit. So that'll be good.
Thank you. Nothing else, thank you.
I don't have any comments. So it looks like our next meeting is April 26th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in these wonderful chambers. So with that in mind, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mike, thanks, Christina, thanks, Denise.
Of course.
Christina, can I drop off my